Most respected Matthew session, my dear brothers and sisters. This is the second Sunday now that we are in once our liturgical cycle has reset, we are in the second Sunday, which is the Sunday of dedication. The dedication of the temple or dedication of the church. And it really makes me wonder. We're talking about the rededication, or the dedication in this case, of the church. And this is idea about, it's a good time for us to really examine what it is that we are dedicated to. And that word dedication is pretty interesting, because what it means is something that's that's set aside. It's made or set aside for one specific purpose. And it's only going to be used for that one particular purpose. And we're all required to dedicate ourselves. Like in a small example, I'm wearing these vestments. And I think I've used this example before, but I don't use these vestments outside of Qurbana or outside of a liturgical sacrament. I wouldn't wear these at home. I wouldn't wear these. I don't even wear these to show whenever we have lessons with the acolytes. I didn't put this on to show them as an instructional tool. I didn't use it then. We showed it to them, but I didn't wear it then. Because it's set aside, it's used to set aside for one particular purpose. It is dedicated for a particular purpose, for service. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is our dedication? Where are we dedicated? Or to whom? To what are we dedicated? And one of the things I was so happy about when I first came to this parish was I looked up and I was like, there's some very nice light fixtures, and some very nice icons, very nice pews, and some very nice appointments throughout this whole church. And physically, it's a very nice, very aesthetically, very appealing church. And the beauty of it is, I don't know who really paid for any of it. I'm sure collectively we all did. But I don't know who paid for that particular icon. And I don't know who paid for that table. Because there's no name tag on it. I've been to a particular church. Unfortunately, I have to say unfortunately, I've been to this particular church where every item had a name tag on it. Donated by, or in the memory of, and all these things, right? Every window pane, every icon, every table, every candle stand, even the light fixtures, the door, the pews, everything had a name tag on it. Now that's not to say that there's anything, well, I don't want to talk bad about them or anything like that, not to say that they're doing anything wrong, but Christ himself said, when we do something for others to see, that in itself is its reward. And that's the extent of it. But when we do something, when we give, when we serve, when we give money in a way where no one is seeing and no one is aware, where the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, then there's even greater reward. Because then Christ himself says, no other person sees it except your Heavenly Father sees these things. And so it was almost dismaying because the number of labels, number of things that were put on each individual item. I was scared to look inside the prayer book to see like each book was donated by one person. I don't know. And it was a little scary to think about. Because once we start putting our labels on something, we come to the church and we say, yep, that right there, that lampstand, I bought that. That's my lampstand. I'm going to stand under the lampstand because I only want light from that lampstand. I don't want light from any other lamp. I want from that particular light stand, that's mine. I paid for that. So I'm going to make sure I stand underneath that and get all the basking, the glory that comes from that lampstand. I don't care about the other lampstands. If any light bulb goes out, that one better be replaced first. This is my lampstand, I paid for it. Where's the glory of that? What is being dedicated when we think like that? We're thinking about our own selves. This isn't my lampstand. This isn't my particular pew. It might even be hard for some of us to believe that we don't even have assigned seats in church. But sometimes we do that, right? We put little labels on things, or we attach these values and almost sentimental value to these things that are almost aesthetic, that are only aesthetic. And we put so much value in them and we kind of miss the point. Because of what happens today in this building, and every Sunday in this building, and every evening that happens here, this is a holy place. But if it wasn't for any of that, this is just a building made of bricks. And that's what the apostle was telling us today. In the reading that was read over here from Acts, there's this idea that, yes, all these things were built. The temple was built, the tabernacle was built. And the very particular say it was built by the hands of man, which is true. But until it becomes a dwelling place of God, it's just a shelter. It's just a building. It's not any different. It's what happens within. It's what happens inside that building. It's what happens in this service that makes this such a special place. That our focus isn't on who paid for what and what color is what, but what happens back there on the throne over there. Because that's what St. Paul was talking about in this reading. And he said, once a year, the high priest would go into the temple and offer a sacrifice. Why did he have to do it once a year? He had to go in once a year because that's all that sacrifice was good for. He had to go once a year and offer his blood offering, and it only lasted a year, so he had to kind of go back and do it every single year again, and keep offering a new sacrifice every year. But how many sacrifices did Christ make?
One.
Just the one. And we commemorate it, and we relive it, but it's the same one sacrifice that we relive every single week. And he said, Christ came and made that one sacrifice for all. One for all. He is the true high priest. And where is Christ now? He's in heaven with the Father. But every time we commemorate, every time we celebrate the divine liturgy, where is he? Here with us. He's on the altar. And so I've said this many times before, right? That wherever Christ is, that's where heaven is. So when we celebrate the divine liturgy, this building is not a building anymore. It becomes a place where heaven and earth meet. And when we take ourselves out of here and we treat this place like it's a building, and we treat what we're doing, our service, like it's just whatever, then we lose that. We disconnect ourselves from the divine. We lose that connection between heaven and earth. But right where Christ is, that's where heaven is. And so when we celebrate the divine liturgy, and that bread and wine become body and blood, that's where Christ is. Which means that's where heaven is. And that's where our focus is. Because we want to be as close to that heaven as we possibly can, even if it's just for a moment. And this building is dedicated for that. Otherwise, it's no different than any of the other houses here. It's a little bigger, but it's no different than any of the other houses here. It's no different than any other building. This might as well be just a social club. But it's not. And we shouldn't treat it like a social club. And our participation in this place isn't as a social gathering. The aspect is there, but it's not the main purpose. We're here so that we can witness and we can participate in heaven. In heaven. With the Father and the Son. And completed by the Holy Spirit. And that we're here. Dedicating ourselves, not to all those things that are out there. Not to name tags and who paid for what, and worldly pleasures, and increasing wealth, and all these other things. What do we dedicate ourselves to? We dedicate ourselves as this building was dedicated. This building was dedicated, and it was consecrated, and it was signed and sealed. And the same way, and I think this was mentioned earlier, one of our, I saw this on Facebook the other day, right? There's a great thing that if you think about it, Moron is only used twice. What is it used for? Consecration of churches and ourselves. Two things that are set aside solely for the worship of God. Two things that are set aside solely for the worship of God. We consecrate church buildings and we consecrate the newly baptized. Because they are being consecrated and set aside and dedicated solely for one purpose, and that is service. And to come closer to God, to experience that divinity, and God willing, we always talk about the word theosis, to get as much into the divinity of God as possible. And so I ask us to spend this day and to really examine what is it that I'm dedicated to. Am I dedicated to my social club? Am I dedicated to my light fixture? Am I dedicated to Christ and the sacrifice that was made once for me? And if he dedicated himself for that, then what am I going to dedicate myself? All praise and thanksgiving to the blessed Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and always, and forever and ever. Amen.